let's just jump right into it. How did you guys like Zack Snyder's Justice League?
This movie is 4 hours long. In case you didn't know that, like, I'll just tell you right now, this movie is 4 hours long. And yes, I did split it up into a couple viewings. This is one of the longest movies I've ever watched since like Ben-Hur or something like that. I feel like they used all the time pretty freaking effectively. Like, call me crazy, but this movie was 4 hours, and even though I had to split up the viewing, I was like, I don't think there was ever a part where I was like, this movie does not need to be this long. That was my personal like opinion for like the whole thing. I was like, they really used it effectively.
My honest opinion, I would love to see a 3-hour cut of this movie.
3-hour cut. You don't feel like it would cut out too much story and we'd have like a repeat of what happened?
No, because the original was like 2 hours, plus they've refilmed a bunch of stuff and they tried to like, they changed the story a little bit. Like there's just a lot of this that there's a couple scenes that kind of repeat something that's been said. There's like 2 scenes of Aquaman walking in slow motion into the ocean, which we don't need to have. You know,
I wasn't complaining about that personally.
Like Jason Momoa fangirls needed to have it, Vince.
I'm not complaining either. Like I enjoyed all 4 hours of this movie. I'm with you, Josh. I've watched it twice. I watched it beginning to end straight through the first time, and then I watched it in pieces the second time, in chapters. I'd watch like 2 chapters at a time throughout the week or something like that. I enjoyed it more watching it in chapters than I did watching it from beginning to end.
I agree.
But I'm not saying I didn't like everything that's in there. I just think that, like with Batman v Superman, it's a long 3-hour movie, but 3 hours feels doable.
It's still reasonable.
You know? Yeah.
And I feel like it makes it more rewatchable as well.
A 4-hour cut just seems a little bit too long, where I'm like, I could see myself watching this beginning to end if it was an hour shorter. But if I ever watch this again, I'm going to be watching it in chunks because that's the way I preferred it.
I agree with you 100%. So I watched it through the first time in one sitting, and I was like Josh, like I felt like they used the time effectively. But then I sat down and rewatched it chapter at a time instead of like just back to back. And I thought it was better that way. And I think that the way that it felt too was it felt, because it was framed the way it was and because of how they broke it up, it felt actually more like a comic book series to me, which I think was the effect, and maybe I'm wrong, that a lot of people like that held the more of the nostalgia for me of like reading comic books, and it made it feel like I could see the people moving and flying, and like it allowed me, the second watch through allowed me to digest the situation a little bit better and why he did things. But I wouldn't mind a shorter cut for sure, but I worry that we would go back into the crappy Justice League movie, and that's where I'm at. But what I'm grateful for is that he got, like, there was a lot of stupid comedic parts that were removed from this series.
All the Joss Whedon stuff.
Yeah, that guy sucks. Like,
hey, whoa! Before we go too far there, he's the guy who directed the first Avengers movie,
and that's fine. But that's a different universe here. Like,
okay, and I'm all for that. I'm just saying, before we just say Josh Whedon sucks as a blanket statement, let's just.
No, I think he sucks. Like,
okay,
that's how
fine,
I feel. I think he sucks because, like, you can't, like, if one formula works, and like maybe Warner Brothers needed it to copy, but they took the soul out of it. Like, Josh Whedon took the soul out of this film, and that's why I think he sucks. Like, the original story was probably better, but I think Josh Whedon made it suck. Like, that's how I feel. I don't know how to say that.
I didn't like what he did to the movie at all either. And I'm with you though. I like how when it's cut apart, those things that I was complaining about just barely, of like noticing every time the Wonder Woman song came on, I didn't notice it when I was watching it in chunks. Seeing Jason Momoa walk in slow motion a couple of times didn't stand out as blaringly because I saw it one night, and then 2 nights later I saw it again, and it wasn't like I just saw this. It was like, oh yeah, here's Jason Momoa be a badass again. Let's do this, So I don't know. It's interesting with streaming how they can do this kind of thing where it's like make this giant movie and then just make it palatable for an audience, because this would never work in theaters. But I'm so glad that we did get it and we did get to see it.
Well, and I wonder too if they had been able to do this, for instance, in a theater per se. If they why don't they bring intermissions back to the movies?
Money. These are too long. You can only have like 4 showings a day with a 4-hour movie.
But if you charge a little bit extra money,
if people are willing to. But
I'd be willing to. That's what I'm saying. Like, and this maybe goes back to what I talked about earlier, was like the cinema experience needs to change. I'll pay good money to go to a play or a musical or something like that, and those all have intermissions, and I stay. and those do 1 or 2 showings a night. But like, I'm not sure what the turnover rate is on what the theater takes, what the studio takes, and how much popcorn they can sell. But give it a break in the middle of the movie. I'd go buy a second batch of popcorn. They can make more money. But I think a break of this movie in the theater or something like this should come back. Like, we need a break because that was cool, but like, I'm not always going to want to sit at home now that I'm getting vaccinated and free to go again. I'm going to go pay
for Kong versus Godzilla when I could watch it on HBO for free. I'm still going to go watch it in IMAX. Wonder Woman song is perfect. It pumps you up every time. The original one, yeah. But every time that Wonder Woman did something in this, and let me preface with, Wonder Woman was one of my favorite parts of this movie. Everything she did in this, I was super into. But every time she did something, it did that stupid like sound of like...
The subtitles describe it as, in parentheses, ancient lamentation music.
Yeah. Yes. And when you watch the whole thing, like beginning to end, it stands out like crazy. It's like, oh, here's that thing again. Oh, there's that thing again.
And that's all of it. Like, not to go too far into it since we probably want to go through movie info and stuff, but that was also one of my nitpicks, is that I love that they bring back the character themes for each of them, like when they're doing different things, because each character had a lot of their own like individual things for this, but it just kind of became very obvious. And like, I don't know, it didn't feel as good or as like original for me, because you know that I love the Hans Zimmer Man of Steel theme, but just like that piano music coming up every time like that we see Superman, after a while I was like, okay, like I'm not into this. Like, I like it and you can use it, but not every time that we see Clark Kent. Like, calm down. So
after 4 hours, you really start to feel it.